Welcome to Settling's Not an Option. I'm Amanda Stanhope, and I'm here with my amazing friend, Adam Neves. If you enjoy listening to curious-minded people having interesting conversations, then you're in the right place. Our aim is to confront assumptions, challenge expectations, and encourage as many people as we can to stop settling for an unfulfilling life. To support the show, you can follow us on Spotify, Amazon Music, or YouTube. And if you're so inclined, you can find a link to coffee in the description where you can donate as little as $1 to help us keep the show going. And today we are trying out a new format for the show. We're trying some reaction videos. I just wrapped one up, which you can find. That one will be published separately. You can find it and see how I did. But this will be Adam's first attempt at a reaction video, so I'm excited to see how this goes. But also, I'm also excited just to see, obviously, Adam's reaction to a great Jordan Peterson video that I found. And it's going to be a little bit, like we were talking before the show, it's going to be a little bit of a surprise for both of us because I found this video a long time ago because we've been talking about doing this reaction video for a long time. And I found this a long time ago and then we got distracted and whatever. We haven't recorded yet. And so I don't even really remember what it was about. I just remember when I watched it, I'm like, I'd love to get Adam's take on this. And I thought that, well, the title is Jordan Peterson on the Meaning of Life for Men, must watch. So I know we've talked about a lot of just what the meaning of life is, and that's Adam's favorite question to ask people.
Very true.
So maybe Jordan Peterson can tell you, at least for men, what the meaning of life is.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, thanks for
so I'm excited. Yes.
All right. Okay.
You can ask the question, Jordan Peterson will answer it.
If anyone's going to know the meaning of life, it's Jordan Peterson.
That's right. That's right. All right.
All right, here we go. Press and play.
Well, I'll tell you a couple of strange things, things that I don't really understand. The first is, when we've done the analysis of the effects of the future authoring program, it has had a differential impact on men. And it's had a particularly differential impact on what I would call excluded men. And so that would be non-Western ethnic minority men, or what majority men who aren't doing very well. So for example, at Mohawk College, the future authoring program had a particularly robust effect on Mohawk College students who were men who hadn't done very well in high school and who hadn't picked a major that had a career destination at its end. So you can imagine those people.
So is he talking about a program? Like, is there...
The future authoring program, I believe that was something he was the head of. But yeah, it was some sub-study or something that you could take, like, at the college that he was teaching at, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
But yeah, it was like a college program. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
They have an ambiguous relationship with the idea of education. And they're not oriented specifically towards a goal. They're not very motivated. Now, why did it have a differential effect on men? That's a good question. Well, first of all, the women are doing better. So it might just be a matter of the fact that it does better for people who aren't doing as well, and at the moment, most of them are men. I think that might be part of it. But I don't believe that's all of it. I think that part of the reason that women are doing better is because they're agreeable. And so if a system sets out a structure and says, here's a pathway to attainment, the women won't rebel against that, they'll go along with it. And that's working very well for them at the moment. The men, especially the men on the
I think that's a really interesting point, because he talks about the agreeableness of women a lot. But that's true. I think men, we like to kind of buck against these trends, which is quite often to our detriment. So, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Disagreeable end of the distribution. And there's way more men on the disagreeable end of the distribution than there are women, right? That's what you get from, if you look at overlapping normal distributions. So there's the female distribution for agreeableness, male distribution for agreeableness. Tremendous overlap. Okay, women are higher. All the really agreeable people are women. All the really disagreeable people are men. And maybe the real differences occur at the extremes, right? And it's a very interesting side effect of overlapping distributions. So people can be mostly the same, but that can still produce radical differences. Disagreeable men won't do anything they don't want to do. They just say, up yours. I'll go home and play video games. Are you with me? I'm not listening to your stupid classes. And why should I work for you?
That's a really good point. I mean, I think that's what I'm finding, and it's probably why there's such a reluctance. It's actually been Men's Mental Health Week in Australia quite recently.
Oh, okay.
Don't know if that's an international thing or whether it's just Australia, but it's because we have to really tackle men as a cohort because they are so disagreeable, and there is such a reluctance to have that conversation. Like, it's ingrained in men. Like, I don't want to talk about my feelings, so I'll butt against that, and so you almost have to create this big movement to get men to talk about it. So I totally agree with you, Jordan. I'd like men to be less disagreeable.
I'll just go have fun. I'll do my own thing. I don't think they're motivated. And so then if you take the men who are like that and you say, okay, what do you want? You can have what you want, but you have to figure out what it is. So then they write down what they want and they think, oh, hey, well, that might be worth having, so maybe I'll put some effort into it. That's what it looks like to me. Now, that's weak evidence. And this is a weak argument. But I'm trying to stretch out my understanding to account for this. But I'll tell you something else that's really weird. I don't understand this either. So, more than 90% of the people who watch my videos on YouTube are men. Now that's weird because about 80% of psychology students are women. So that is not what you would expect, right? You would expect that the majority of them would be women. And you might say, well, it's because of the political stance I've taken. And I thought, well, that's possible. So I went and looked at the demographic data because I have that. Well, before I did any of the political videos, 85% of my viewers were men. So it's actually increased a bit. It's increased by 6%. And that's not trivial, but it was still overwhelmingly men. So that was interesting. I thought, what the hell? Why is that exactly? And then now I've been watching crowds when I've been talking to them. And the crowds that have come to see me in person. This happened at the University of Toronto free speech debate. And I actually noticed it and commented on it before the debate took place because I was talking about intrinsic differences between men and women. And I looked around the room and I thought, hey, 80% of the people in this room are men. So I had all the women stand up and then all the men stand up. I said, look, here's a natural experiment. For some reason, 80% of the people who showed up to this are men. Now everybody thought I was kind of cracked to do that. And it was a risk, but I thought, no, there's something going on here. And then what's interesting now is that every public appearance that I've made that's related to the sort of topics that we're discussing is overwhelmingly men. It's like 85 to 90%. And so I thought, wow, that's weird. What the hell's going on here exactly? And then the other thing I've noticed is that I've been talking a lot to the crowds that I've been talking to, not about rights, but about responsibility, right? Because you can't have the bloody conversation. What are you doing? You can't have the conversation about rights without the conversation about responsibility because your rights are my responsibility. That's what they are, technically. So you
got to think on that. So your rights.
Yeah, that's a powerful one, isn't it? Your rights are my responsibility.
Yeah, that's interesting. So by that, does he mean, is that why he's so passionate about, say, that, Bill 17, C-17, or whatever it was around, well, I know there's a lot to that, but in terms of, it's my right for you, I want to be called the pronoun that I choose, and that's my right. And he's saying, but then that's my responsibility, and that was his issue to say.
Yeah, exactly.
The mandated,
and he doesn't want that responsibility. He's not going to accept that responsibility.
Yeah, that's interesting. That makes a lot more sense as to why.
It does make a lot of sense, but you never think of it that way.
No, gosh.
But it's true because in order to give someone else a right, you have to show them respect and be responsible for making sure that they can exercise that right.
Well, this is interesting. I mean, I'm going to have to give this one a lot of thought.
Yeah.
Say in Australia, and sorry to keep talking so much about the workplace mental health stuff, but so there's a big reluctance here, or well, not so much now, but for a while there was a big reluctance to change our regulations around psychological health and safety. Okay. And because people were really concerned as employers, I don't want to have to worry about your mental health. I'm here to be your employer, and that's it. Right. And so it probably makes sense in line with what Jordan say. And again, it's predominantly men that were kind of pushing back on that. But it's because they're saying, well, as soon as you say it's my right as an employee to have, healthy, psychologically healthy working conditions, it's then their responsibility as the employer to provide those, and they're saying, well, I don't know how to do that. I'm not prepared to take that responsibility. So that's interesting. It kind of frames why it's so hard to get this change. Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
You just can't have only half of that discussion, and we're only having half that discussion. And the question is, well, what the hell are you leaving out if you only have that half of the discussion? And the answer is, well, you're leaving out responsibility. And then the question is, well, what are you leaving out if you're leaving out responsibility? And the answer might be, well, maybe you're leaving out the meaning of life. That's what it looks like to me. It's like, here you are, suffering away. What makes it worthwhile? Rights? You know, you're completely out. You have no idea what it's almost impossible to describe how bad an idea that is. Responsibility. That's what gives life meaning. It's like lift a load. Then you can tolerate yourself, right? Because look at, you're useless, easily hurt, easily killed. Why should you have any self-respect? That's the story of the fall. Pick something up and carry it.
See, this is the thing. Like, he's so passionate, but you can see why people get so, because he's talking to things that people don't want to talk about. Like, pick something up and carry it and be responsible. People don't want to be responsible. They're like, no.
Well, and even where I don't remember what word he just used, but like you said, you're useless or whatever he said. It's like, people don't want to admit that either.
No.
And I mean, that's a hard thing to face, but I mean, we've all been there at some point in our life where, you were pretty useless, generally speaking.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But that's another thing. And you have to face that first before you can take on the responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. This is why some people, don't take Jordan the right way, is because he's talking to stuff that we know that we don't want to deal with. So
exactly, right.
Interesting. I love how passionate he is.
Yeah.
Make it heavy enough so that you can think, well, useless as I am, at least I could move that from there to there. Well, what's really cool about that is that when I talk to these crowds about this, the men's eyes light up. And that's I've seen that phenomenon because I've been talking about this mythological material for a long time. And I can see when I'm watching crowds, people, their eyebrows lift, their eyes light up because I put something together for them. And that's what mythological stories do. So I'm not taking responsibility for that. That's what the stories do. So I say the story and people go click, 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 and their eyes light up. But this responsibility thing, that's a whole new order of this, is that young men are so hungry for that, it is unbelievable. And one of the things I've been talking to some of the people who've been running for the Conservative leadership in Canada, and I've been talking to them about, the difficulties they have communicating with young people, because Conservatives, what the hell are they going to sell to young people, right? Because being Conservative is something that happens when you're older. They can sell responsibility. No one's selling it. And the thing is, for men, there's nothing but responsibility. I was watching The Simpsons the other day. I watched the first Simpsons episode, and I deconstructed it. And so it's really interesting. So what happens in the first Simpson episode is that it's Christmas, and Homer and Marge are going to buy some Christmas presents, but Homer doesn't get his Christmas bonus. And so he's absolutely crushed by that. And that actually is a recurring theme in The Simpsons, where Homer loses his job or something like that, or can't make enough money. He's completely crushed. Even though he's kind of useless, bumbling, laughing fool of a guy, the thing that gives that show its soul is that he's still oriented towards his family. That's what makes him honorable, is that foolish as he is, he's decided to adopt responsibility for his family and to try to bear that. And so he's a holy fool. He's not a complete fool. And it's so interesting watching the story because he suffers dreadfully as a consequence of not being able to fulfill his responsibility. Well, that's for men. Women have their sets of responsibilities. They're not the same, right? Because they're complicated, because women, of course, have to take primary responsibility for having infants at least, but then also for caring.
So this is what we've kind of talked about before, you and I. Around the shifting role of men and women in the workforce and how those primary roles
or just in society in general, but definitely the workforce,
and how that's causing men in a way to lose their standard roles, and so it's leading to a lot of people that are confused, saying, well, hold on, like, I can't be responsible now because my normal recipe for being responsible has been taken away.
Exactly.
But isn't it interesting how those roles have changed, yet there's been no no substitute for men. It's kind of like, right, women now have the right to work just as much as men, and they should have a career. And I'm not saying that's not important, but basically it said, but for the men that, kind of maybe take a back seat to,
Right.
To women, in that role, where are they now? Like, what's their new place? There's no discussion of that, at least that I know of. So,
right, exactly.
Caring for them. They're structured differently than men. For biological necessity, even if it's not a psychological issue, and it's also partly a psychological issue. Women know what they have to do. Men have to figure out what they have to do. And if they have nothing worth living for, then they stay Peter Pan. And why the hell not? Because the alternative to valued responsibility is impulsive, low-class pleasure. And you saw that in the Pinocchio story, right? That's Pleasure Island. It's like, well, why lift a load if there's nothing in it for you? That's another thing that we're doing to men that's a very bad idea. And to boys. It's like, you're pathological and oppressive. It's like, fine then, why the hell am I going to play? If that's the situation, if I get no credit for bearing responsibility, you can bloody well be sure I'm not going to bear any. But then...
Shit. So, this is good. Sorry.
No, I love that. You're like, oh, shit.
Normally I have like a few hours to ponder on these videos. This is why it's good that we're doing it this way.
Yeah,
but that's so true. Because, I've never really thought about why men love his videos so much. But it is because, as he says, like, innately, women know what their role is. Like, it's built into your DNA.
Yeah.
Whereas for men, we are just kind of lost boys just walking around trying to figure out what to do. And society over the years has told us what to do, so we just follow that. But now those lines are becoming blurred. Wow, yeah.
Well, yeah, not only blurred, but the other point that he makes too is that men are being demonized.
Yes.
Because he talks a lot, not in this video necessarily, but this is one of his recurring themes if you watch him talk enough. But, like just even the term toxic masculinity or like that we're living in a patriarchal society and just like even using these terms to make men feel like being masculine. There's something wrong with being masculine.
Yeah.
And so then they will stop doing the things that would make them feel more masculine, which would give them meaning. Like you said, like women aren't chastised for doing things that make them more feminine.
No.
But men are chastised for doing things that would make them more masculine sometimes.
Yeah. Very good point. Yeah. Yeah, we've got to think about this stuff because this is
because it's very important,
and it's only going to get bigger and bigger. But there's almost a lack of defense for men, and I have to say, even thinking about holding a conversation with somebody, kind of in line with what with what Peterson's saying, which I completely agree with. People will not take it the right way. They'll be like, "Are you being like sexist? Are you saying women don't matter?"
No, not at all. He's saying just the opposite.
Yeah. That's interesting.
If you listen,
but it's people will just equate it in that way.
Yep.
Good video. All right, let's keep going.
And your life is useless and meaningless, and you're full of self-contempt and nihilism, and that's not good. And so that's why that's what I think's going on at a deeper level with regards to men needing this direction. A man has to decide that he's going to do something. He has to decide that. Yeah, well, partly what you're trying to do in the future authoring process is say, okay, well, what's your highest value? Right? It's the star. It's like, okay, what are you aiming for? You can decide, man. But, there's some criteria. It should be good for you. It should be good for you in a way that facilitates you moving forward. Maybe it should be good for you in a way that's also good for the family and the community. It should cover the domain of life. I mean, there's constraints on what you should regard as a value. But within those constraints, you have the choice. You have choice. Well, the thing is that people will carry a heavy load if they get to pick the goddamn load. So, and they think, well, I won't carry any load. It's like, okay, fine, but then you're like the sled dog that doesn't have a sled to pull. You're gonna tear pieces out of your own legs because you're bored. People are pack animals. They need to pull against a weight. And that's not true for everyone. It's not true particularly, say, for low conscientious people. I mean, maybe they're open and creative or extroverted and some other things. But for the typical person, they'll eat themselves up unless they have a load. This is why there's such an opiate epidemic among dispossessed, white, middle-aged guys who are unemployed in the US. It's like they lose their job, they're done, right? They despise themselves. They develop chronic pain syndromes and depression. And the chronic pain is treated with opiates. It's like, that's what we're doing.
You know, that's...
He just like touches on so much stuff in 10 minutes.
Yeah, he's done.
Like crazy.
Yeah, this is a lot. It's important. People need to talk about this. This is the thing. People need to talk about this and listen to it. The problem is, I think, people don't want to listen to it. I have to say, with some of the conversations I've had, as soon as I mention the name Peterson,
people shut
go,
down.
oh, no, I've watched, we said this before we started, they hear that and they've seen one tidbit where he's maybe said something that has been taken in the wrong way and then he's demonized for it. But people need to listen to what he's saying here because this is very true. Like, I have to say, as a man, I need purpose. Like, that's why I didn't want to carry the load of working in the bank because it was shit. I was like, why am I carrying this load when I'm not enjoying it? This PhD is a heavier load than I've ever carried, but it's meaningful to me and it's protective to my mental health. So I think, whatever conversations are happening in society around this, shift, we have to get away from the patriarchy and, men should stop, dominating the workforce. Okay, well, what is the solution then? Like, if we're going to have more women in C-suite positions, what are you doing to make sure that those disenfranchised men are not then kind of, losing their reason for being? Because that's bad for their mental health. So,
and that's bad for women. And that's what people don't see either. Because I do feel like men get demonized a lot for a lot of different reasons. And that's not good for anybody.
No.
Because they're going to take that home to their wife or their girlfriend or their boyfriend or whoever. They're going to take it home to their partner or even their family, even if they don't have a partner. Whoever, they're going to take that home to someone and take it out on them.
Yes.
And then that person's going to be, what do I want to say, mentally abused or whatever. And then they're going to take that out on someone else. And it's just going to keep going down. So it's like, you can't just leave men out of the equation because I feel like there's been so much focus on, helping women become more prominent in the workforce and in society, which is okay. I mean, I'm not against that, but you can't just forget the other side of the equation, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. I do feel that men are left out of this conversation. It's this, and I am a huge advocate for more women in leadership because I do believe we need more conscientious, agreeable people in leadership. And again, something that I always shy away from saying, but I'm getting more confident in saying it is, we need women who are feminine leaders, feminine leaders. That's what we're missing because we have often, female leaders come in and they demonstrate masculine traits.
Yeah, like they fake those. I mean, some women, that's natural to them. Yeah. But I feel like a lot of them just fake it because they think that's what they're supposed to do.
And I've experienced that. And if it's not, if that person's faking it or just not doing it in the right way, it's very damaging to the people that person's managing. So again, I think men need to be involved in this conversation, and it needs to be, if there's some constructive comments that men have to say as we get closer to this, we need to have a respectful dialogue and stop saying, oh, this man's being disgusting pig by putting forward this idea, which is kind of where I think we sit now, and probably why Peterson cops such abuse from people. So I'm getting on my high horse now. I'm channeling a bit of Jordan Peterson. All right, yes. 1 minute to go.
So, yeah, that's what it looks like to me. Is you have to, and it's so interesting to watch the young men when you talk to them about responsibility. They're so goddamn thrilled about it. It just blows me away. It's like, really? That's the counterculture. Grow the hell up and do something useful. Really? I could do that? Oh, I'm so excited by that idea. No one ever mentioned that before. It's like rights, 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 rights. Jesus. It's appalling. And I feel that that's deeply felt by the people who are coming out to listen to these sorts of things too. They've had enough of that. So, and they better have, because it's a non-productive mode of being. Responsibility, man. That's where the meaning in life is. So.
Well said.
There you go. You
Good
know
choice
now
of
you know the
video.
meaning of life.
Yeah, wow. That's really interesting. I mean, I haven't heard him talk about that topic before, so.
Oh, good, because I've heard him talk about it a lot. And so then at first I'm like, oh, I hope Adam hasn't already heard all these talking points before.
Yeah.
But
Well, I've heard him talk about the Peter Pan stuff, and that was always a good metaphor, I thought.
Yep.
But I do like how he uses stories to help illustrate these things, you know, because I never thought of The Simpsons in the way that he just discussed it.
And that's what just cracked me up. He is like, who sits and dissects The Simpsons besides Jordan Peterson?
It's such an academic thing to do. Like, oh yes, I think I might like just look at the first. But it's very interesting that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's given me a lot to kind of consider, I think.
Cool.
You know, so good job. Look at us.
A win is a win.
Thing.
Yeah, I know. This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
It's going well.
Really good. All right.
Awesome.
So do you want to do the formal wrap up? I can't remember
Sure.
what it is.
Yeah, I know. All right. So, yeah, you've never done the formal wrap up. I don't think. So, if you made it this far, we really appreciate you listening or watching. You can find us on YouTube, Amazon Music, or on Spotify. And if you would like to donate as little as $1 to us to help us keep the show going, there will be a link to coffee in the description where you can do that. And with that being said, we'll just say cheers to not settling.
Bye.
Take care.